Hey, FG here. Welcome out to the shop and to Sunday Night Silver. All right, we're starting off in the studio here this morning, and that is because this is going to be a two-part episode. You're watching part one right now. We're releasing Sunday morning, and we're going to have essentially a look at what it takes to take somebody's picture or art, uh, something that they're passionate about, and turn it into silver art. So this morning's episode is kind of long, but what I'm going to be showing here is from receiving a couple images through to having the print ready to go out to the shop. And then this evening's episode will be taking that print and actually doing the silver pour and showing the final result. So with that, we're going to get right into it here. I'm going to be trying to describe what I'm doing as you're seeing it. And again, it's fairly long, but if you enjoy that kind of stuff, kind of just sit and watch. I'll put on some music, a little bit of music in the background, but I'll just kind of be describing what I'm doing. So hope you enjoy this look into how I turn people's requests into silver pours. All right, so here we are with the website Sculpt OK. I first visited this website after watching some of Silverpunk's videos, and I've tried other websites and I kept coming back to this one. So it is a paid website. Let's go ahead and go into, we'll check out the pricing here real quick. And we can see that, it has different levels, whether you're Pro, Master, Ultimate. You can see that you get different levels of credits based on if you do subscribes. You can just buy credits, which is typically what I do. Rather than having a monthly subscription, I just buy a set level number of credits. They never expire. There are some things that are available only to what they call their VIP members, which are subscription members. But you can see basically if you're spending credits, the amount of credits you're spending on things are pretty much the same across these, or if you're just a la carte. So not cheap, but not super expensive either. You figure 200 credits, $15. So if we're spending, say, 18 credits plus 4, so 22 credits, it's going to be a little over $1.50. So not too bad. So the tools, they have a bunch of different tools that you can use that each cost credits. What we're using today is going to be the AI depth map here. And once you get onto this page, it's kind of basic controls at this point. We're going to click, and here's our two images that we're working with today. So we're just going to select one of the images, say open, and there we go. That's what we're going to be working with. They have different models that kind of do different things. There used to be more models, but I think they've kind of weeded them down. Color image, I've never really just used this one. I used to use Sculpt Pro. They've recently come out with this Sculpt Pro 1.5, kind of the new one, new algorithms. So we're just going to select that one. And then because I'm not a VIP, I can't select that we're going to do this in 4K. So we're just going to do basic 2K. And we can see that the draw cost is 4 credits. So we're going to go ahead and select that. And we can see the drawing started. This usually takes a few moments. We just kind of sit back, relax. All right, and there we go. So this is what's called a heat map. So what it did was it looked at this image that we have over here, and the black it's interpreting as the highest points, which end up being white in the heat map. So the whiter it is, the higher it is in the relief. And we have some options. You can just download this straight from here, or you can get 3D printer previews. The download, the no watermark preview, that actually costs you credits. So what I usually do is I usually go ahead and click just the 3D preview, and that takes us through to this page where it will show up. You can see it still has the watermarks across it. So this isn't something that we would use, but it just lets me come in here and take an initial look at it to see if it's something I think is going to pour, because I don't want to spend additional credits beyond the 4 that I spent to generate it initially if I don't think it's going to pour well. You can see that we actually see the image here, and that's because they've added a feature here called texture mapping. So if we uncheck that, it's going to take our image off of there, and we're going to be left with just seeing what's actually going to print out in the 3D print. So you can kind of see there's quite a lip here on pup in the middle. These are pretty high relief letters, but everything kind of looks uniform. It's in the raised rather than indented. In fact, there is a invert image option. If you click it, let's see if it's going to do it today. You can see we now have a flat surface where everything's indented. But I rarely ever use that option. So we want to have it raised, high relief. I think that this is going to work for us. So what I'm going to do is I'll close out of this. You see it opened a separate tab. When I close that tab, we're going to come back to here. And since we went to the other tab, it's put this up on top. We're going to actually go ahead and we're going to say we want the no watermark 3D print preview. And you can see there's other VIP things that you can do with upscaling your image or noise and brightness, increasing the heat map essentially. But we're just going to go ahead and get that, and you can see it pops this up. Tells us we're going to be charged 18 credits. You're going to say confirm. And now we're looking at it again, and we can see all the watermarks are gone. So this is essentially what we're going to want. The model scaling down here, what it actually does is this is the level of detail. So I always crank this all the way up as high as it will go. I want as much detail as possible. And it then regenerates this in the background. You see it kind of snap there. And I want to take a look at one thing in particular. You can see the overlay is a pretty good picture of the pup that was in the image that I was provided. If we undo the texture mapping here, I want you to kind of watch the fur details, especially across the chest of pup here, and maybe here in the nose area. So you can see you lose a lot of that detail. It's just such fine detail that the 3D mapping can't really keep up. Only the really coarse stuff, especially like here around the legs, only that stuff really shows up. You lose a lot of the other detail. unfortunately. But that is what we have to work with. So we're going to go ahead and stick with this. Now, there are other controls here for like thickness and thinness. If you increase, for instance, the minimum thinness, the bar gets thicker, but you can see you lose the high resolution or high definition on Pup there. He looks a lot. So I don't usually mess with that stuff too much. I kind of leave it where um, the software leaves it. And I plan to fine tune this later in a later process. So the other one here is relief intensity weight. Sometimes you want to slide that up. It will, if you've got things that are really like too high of points, this will help change that. Um, I think ours is probably fine, so I'm going to leave it back down uh, right around the middle point there. I'll let it go back down. Oops, I didn't slide it far enough. We'll just click on the line here. All right. So we will use this image. So we're just going to go ahead and say download STL. Now, STL is a special format for 3D files that various models of 3D printers can make use of. And I've actually done this process once before, so we're going to end up with another copy of this one. But at this point, we're done in this software. So there we see it finally downloaded, and there we're done. So at this point, we're done with this process. I would do the same thing for the other image, but I've already done it. So we'll just go ahead and minimize that. We'll go back to here. This is the one we just downloaded. We'll just delete that. Here's the two that we've done previously. So now we're going to use those in the Bamboo Labs Studio software. So this is basically showing my print plate on my printer. So we're just going to go to import STL. So that's one of the options here. You can see right here, STL. And we'll import, let's do 5. And this can take a moment. But it's going to pop in here and it's going to be huge compared to my print plate. It comes out of that other software as essentially 120 millimeters by 120 millimeters. And you can see we get a processing warning down here that it has more than 1 million. Well, it definitely has more. It has more like 15 million triangles in it. So it is very processing intensive at this point. So the very first thing I normally do is, and in this case it's already there, but I do a save as and go save this over um, as a file. And actually, let's do, well, no, we'll just do it that way. So it's saving now as the pup round file. You can see how long it's taking to save. And that's because it's really detailed. So the very first thing we're going to do here is I'm going to right click it. and we're going to tell it to simplify the model. And we're simplifying it on extra high detail. So we're keeping extra high detail for what we need. We could look at what we're starting with. We're starting with almost 15 million triangles, and we definitely don't need that. Um, I'm not quite sure. I think it's like surface textured and it's not perfectly smooth, so the surface texture adds all these different triangles. The 3D printer is not going to be able to print those even if we left them in there, so there's really no reason to leave them in there. So we select extra high detail for what the printer can handle, and we just let it chug through here. Subsequent times that we do this will be much shorter because we'll be working with less triangles at that. So you can see even extra high, we're now at under a million. We're at 870,000 triangles. So we'll apply that. And then the very first thing we're going to do after that is we're also going to fix the model, because sometimes doing the simplify causes issues with the internal structure. And the first time we fix it, it's going to take a little bit here also. We'll sit here and watch the bar, but usually we'll see that first tick right away. It'll take a little bit of time. We'll get the second tick, and then the rest of it finishes really quickly. Oh, and we got a background scene change. We're now looking at puffins back there. Good old Windows. There's our second tick, and it should finish up here really pretty quickly at this point. There we go. So we're all fixed. So the next thing we need to do is address the size of it. This is way too big. Like a typical 5-ounce round is 64 millimeters by 64 millimeters. And this is 120 by 120. So it's always easier to work with these, especially for what we're going to be doing if it's flat on the back. So we're going to rotate it on that red axis, 90 degrees to put it down on the back. And at this point, we can look at the sizing, the scale function. We can see here, and it's actually just a smidge off, but essentially 120 by 120. What we're going to do, I'm going to leave it this big to make it easier to see to start with, but we're going to do an add part, and we're going to add a cylinder. And that cylinder is added over here in this list, and it's added in relation to the part that we said to add it to. So if we select this and look at the movement, the coordinates, it's where it was, and it's going to treat it as essentially 0. So we want to take this cylinder and we want to move it to make it in the center. So we don't need to worry about the blue, which is up and down, but we want the green and the red coordinates to put us directly in the center. And then we're going to use the scale on this cylinder, and I can tell this is 120 wide. I've done this enough times that what we'll need is about 110, and we'll stretch it the other way, 110. So 110 by 110, we should be perfectly circular. And now let's take a look. We had those little dots that were around the edge, and if you just see it, I'll zoom in here. Here's those dots around the edge. We can see them here on the top edge, but then they kind of fade out at the sides. We don't see them at all down here on the bottom edge. So we're kind of slightly off center to the image, even though we're in the center of the square. So what we want to do is we're going to go ahead and move it again, and we can see the way we want to move it is positive for the green. So we're just going to move it by 1 millimeter, and there we go. So now we see we've got a little bit of them here, we've got a little bit of them there. They're narrower on the sides. This side's just a smidgen narrower. So let's select the cylinder again. And that's going to be slightly negative on the red axis. If it was coming towards us, it would be positive, but we want to go back the other way. We don't want to move as much as we did before, so let's try 0.5 millimeters. Oop. And I said we need negative 0.5 millimeters. So there we go. Now we're seeing it there. Let's zoom around. Well, that's too far. We're not seeing it at all here now. We'll do negative 0.25. Now we see some there. That is pretty close. Let's just go to negative 0.2. And I think that will be it. So that's what we're looking for. So what are we going to do with this? We're going to use this next tool up here that's called Mesh Boolean. And if you select it from the menu, it's just going to add the two pieces together. But that's not what we want to do. We don't want to add this big cylinder to the picture. What we're going to do is use the intersection tool. We get to select the first piece. So that's going to be our base. And then the second piece is going to be our input. That's going to be our cylinder. And we're going to delete the cylinder after we're done. Delete the input. So what we're going to be left with is only the part of the base where these two items intersect. So let's go ahead and click it. And if you haven't done the simplify model and fix it before you try to do this, I've often crashed the software, but it's trying to work with those millions of triangles and it just chugs. And when I first started doing this, I'd try to do that and I'd have to leave it running overnight. And sometimes I'd come back in the morning and it'd be done like this. And sometimes I'd come back and the software had crashed. So there we go. We kind of have those little denticles. Those are not going to be a problem. I'll show you what we do with those later. But I know that this is too high of relief of text in order to print or 3D, not just 3D print, but translate from the print to the sand casting. So what we're going to do is we're going to fix it along with the other dimensions. So it's still very large. We're at 110, 110. For my capsules that I do the typical coin size, high relief capsules that I use, I know that 47.3 is the size I want to fill the capsule. So we just do 47.3 on both of those. We now have a perfect circle that's 47.3 millimeters. And you can see in relation to 47.3, look how high relief that looks now. So now you understand how perception, when it's large, doesn't look as high relief as it really is. We're at 5 millimeters of relief, and that's way too big. So I know that for the best pours, my text needs to be about 0.5 millimeter. So I'm going to reduce this whole thing to about 1 millimeter. And that'll put my text just about 0.5 millimeter off of the surface. And for what else is out here, that works pretty good. All of this will look pretty good at 0.5 millimeter. So there's no real details. I mean, it's just a pseudo paw print. So that looks good. Because we did trim it with the mesh boolean, the last thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and just tell it to simplify again. And you see how much quicker it took that time, and we're down to 283,000 triangles. And we'll fix it once more. And this will go much quicker as well. There we go. And that one is what we want to work with. So we will take that and put it off in the corner here. And then we're going to tell it to import the other file that we had. So that was 6. Now, in the pores that I typically do, I'm typically not doing both front and a back. This one's going to basically, it costs me twice as much to do the sculpt OK site, but I'm not going to be doing mine. Normally I would add my star and basically our insignia on the back instead of having a reverse, but this is kind of a special request, so we're going to go ahead and do that on this one. But here we are again, greater than 1 million triangles. So first thing we're going to do is go ahead and simplify it. And you can see once again we're at almost 15 million. So we just have to wait for this to chug through, and maybe I'll cut it and speed it up. All right, and there we are. So we can hit apply. And then of course the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and fix it again. Always do the fixing after doing the simplify. Always do the simplify and fixing after doing any type of trimming or mesh boolean activities, just because that way it gets the system happy again and you reduce the chance of crashing the software. All right, so there we go. We're repaired. So we will now essentially do the same process that we did before. We'll flip it down on its back. We'll add the sphere. Oh, sorry, not sphere. We'll delete that. We'll add the cylinder. And we'll coordinate that right in the middle. Go ahead and increase it to 110. We know that worked on the other one, so it's likely to be close on this one. We can kind of see here, well, we have extruding quite a bit from it here, not so much on the side, not so much on this side, so the two sides match, and it's extruding here. So you can kind of see on this one, it's equidistant on opposite sides both ways. It tells us that those dots weren't quite circular, but for our purposes that's going to work. So we can just go ahead and go with the mesh boolean intersection, select the two, and get it doing the intersection delete. And there we go. All right, so now we can see we're definitely wrong size, so that'll be the first thing we take care of. 47.3, 47.3, and here again we have the issue of the really high relief on the text. We also have a really high relief on the dog. If we zoom in, we can see that there is texture across the dog, but really for what our purposes are, we don't really need it this high a relief. So what I'm going to probably suggest we do here, let's see. We look at the edge. Yeah, so you can see even on the ear, we're really high relief here. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to make a clone of this, and it's handy that it puts it exactly side by side. So these are now level horizontally. So if we look at the positioning, let's go back to, we look at the positioning, the green positioning up and down, we're at 97.4, 97.4. So they're exactly level horizontally. That's important, and we want to keep them that way. But what we're going to do is we're going to work with this one to start with, and we're going to use our cutting tool. And what I want is to cut the pooch off, so you can see the level that it's going to cut the pooch off at. I probably want it to go a little bit lower, so let's try 2. We can see that went down a little bit. So now we can kind of see it where it rounds off and it starts into that that kind of flat area of the edge that it put on there to give it a raised relief look. We don't need all of that. So if we zoom in here, we can see that part of it's still there in the purple. That's probably still a little bit more than we need. So let's raise it back up just a little bit. Let's go to 2.1. 2.2. There we go. So I think that looks good for what we want for the raised area. So now we're just going to say perform cut. There we go. So we've now gotten it cut, and it again puts it exactly level horizontally here. We don't need this piece anymore. We'll delete that. Technically, this is all one piece. If you tried to print it, it would really print funky and probably end up with just bird's nest stuff strewn all over your, because there's no backing, nothing holding it together. But for our purposes, we're going to use this tool, Split to Objects. We'll click that, and that'll make each of these things a separate object. And now we can, hold Shift down and Shift select, and we will select objects here so that we end up with just the pup. Yep, okay. So we want just the pup left. So there we go. Now let's go over here to this one. This is the one that we want to fine tune for the words. So we'll select it. We'll select the scale, and we on the reverse we used 1. Let's just do that again. 1. That makes our letters right about the right height and going to be good for the printing. But look, when you reduce it to 1, look at the detail that you lost on the pup, senior pup there. It's just not the same pup, right? Fortunately, we have this one over here. So what we can do is group them. So we'll right click and we'll say merge. Now we know that they're pretty much the exact place horizontally. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab this first. We'll use uh, coordinate object. We'll move it to 0 on the red coordinate here. And then we'll grab the pup and we'll move it to 0, which should put them roughly in the right spot, if not exact. And it looks like it may be just a hair off. We zoom in, we can see, okay, here's the edge, and the white edge is where this is intersecting. So what we want to do is we want to grab the red arrow here, and we can move these by hand. I'm just going to kind of drag it over until it looks like it exactly covers the one that was underneath of it. Let's take a look at this edge. Oh, so that is a little bit wider apparently as it went down. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab the blue here, and we know that we have maybe a half a millimeter of thickness here in the backing. So rather than trying this by hand, let's just put it at 0.3. Let's see what we get now. So we brought it up. It should be sliding out. We see it's much closer to the edge of this. So let's bring this back just a hair. Yeah, it still needs to come back a little bit. Let's go 0.65. That looks really close. Let's zoom around. And remember, we're looking at fractions of a millimeter here. Okay, so we're still really close on this side. So let's go ahead and go to 0.6. There we go. We just barely seen it peek out there. And we're just barely seeing it peek out there. So I think that that's good. And that's going to give us a really high relief on the pup itself, which that's going to be okay, because in this case we're not shooting for like the 3 to 3.5 ounce round. Normally my high relief rounds that can fit in that capsule can be up to 7 millimeters thick, but we're shooting for a much lighter, so still having thickness on the pup works, because we're not taking up that thickness with the round itself, and we're shooting for about 2 ounces here. So we're good, but now we need to make sure that these are essentially cemented together. So we're going to do mesh boolean, and if I just click it here, it's the same as clicking here and just saying union and then selecting the parts. So like if I select that and then select that and then say union, it's going to add them together. Well, that is the same thing as if I just say mesh boolean from here. And of course, it's going to complain about the self intersection. That's fine. We'll do the simplify model, and we'll do the fix. And now we have our obverse and our reverse all done. So what's our next step? Our next step is going to be to make our round. So doing what we're doing with the cutouts and that kind of stuff, that all works best flat on its back. For the next thing that we want to do, it's actually going to work better if we stand them back up. So we're going to go ahead and stand each of them up, and then we need to have them back to back. So we want to 180 degrees this one. And now we have two wafer thin items here. We can just click and drag it. So we have two really thin items. If we look, if they were close together, this is going to be way too thin to pour. Even though we don't want a real thick one for the weight, this is too thin. I would never be able to get this background to pour that thin, because literally that's like 0.5 millimeter of thickness. So what do? All right, I'm glad you asked. So we're going to grab one of the two assemblies. I don't know which one it is. Oh, wrong one. Okay, we'll push it through. So we're going to create an Oreo here. We're going to select this one, right click, we're going to say add part, and we're going to add another cylinder. We'll tip it over and we'll resize it because we know we want it to be 47.3 and 47.3, and we really don't want it to be this thick. I think that we're going to want to pour it probably about 2 millimeters. Let's see, these are so thin, but that'll still be about 3. Let's go 2.5, and then we'll use our coordinates tool. In this case, blue matters because we're standing up right now, so we want 0, and red matters, 0. So now we should be perfectly aligned, and we can just grab the arrow here and slide it back, and you can watch the green coordinate up there. It's 11.6, and when I let go, we're at 3.56. So we'll zoom in here, and we can see the gap here. So as we get closer, 2.98, that's still not close enough. We're probably going to want like 2.7. That'll probably be just good. You can see these little marks here, and that's where it's overlapping. So that's what we want, just a hair of overlap. The system's not going to be happy about it at the moment, but that's what we're looking for. It doesn't come through, so it doesn't make these any less high relief. So we'll right click it. We're going to say mesh boolean. We want to stick them together. Yes, it has self intersection, so I'm going to do simplify model again and fix it. And now it's happy with this part. So now what we'll do is select both of them, say merge, and when you do a merge of two existing parts like that, it will essentially consider what's the middle point. So you can see in this case, we move that one a little bit, we move this one a little bit, and now they're aligned, and they were both 0 on the blue axis. So now the only thing that we have to worry about is the green axis again. We get it really close here. We're at minus, so let's go to minus 1.9. Oh, I went the wrong way. Minus 2.1. And you see that is not quite close enough. We still have a slight crack there. So minus 2.2. Still have a hairline crack. So minus 2.3. And there we go. just a slight overlap. You can see those little marks there. That looks good. So now, last thing I do is I will select it here and we'll check the scale, and we're about 6.4. So remember, my high relief capsules can handle up to 7. It's really like 7.2. So we're well within that, but we know that most of our high relief is going to be coming from senior pup here. This is really not that thick, all in all. So we'll go ahead and stick it together. So mesh boolean, and simplify it again, and fix it again. Okay, that is essentially our round. We are going to now flop it back onto its back again. And whenever you do this, basically it flops down to where whatever its highest relief on this side is sitting against your print plate. So essentially it's sitting on the plate, right? So at this point, what we're going to do is we are going to add our let's see, add our rim back onto it, and it's way over there. So we just give it coordinates over here. It's the wrong orientation, so we'll flop it down, and then we have to redo the blue coordinate, and there we go. So now we have the rim on there, but that's kind of odd, right? The rim is centered, so you can see the denticles, there's that much below the rim, and there's going to be actually that much above the rim of the pup there. So we want to fix that. And actually the easiest way to do that is we say split to objects again. So now the round and the rim are separate. We'll select this and just reconfirm 6.44. So we'll go to the rim and we'll make it 6.44. And it's now sitting, since we broke it apart, it sits flat against the print plate. And since it's 6.44, it is going to be essentially the exact same height as the highest point on the high relief. So now it's sitting flat with the back, and it stretches up high enough to where, like when it's in the capsule, it'll be flush against the face of the capsule, and you won't just have the high point of the pup's nose here pressing against the capsule. Now, I will say that this is going to kind of create a challenge in pouring. When you get rims that are this tall, it's sometimes hard to maintain the sand really well. But I'm going to give this a go just because I really want to keep the pup as high a relief as possible to keep as much detail, because you can see right now what this is showing us, there is detail here in the fur, but it has to translate from this image to actually getting printed out also, and we're going to lose some of this detail in the print. So we want to keep this as detailed as we possibly can at this point. Okay, so the rim's good. So now we need to let's see. Oh, we split it apart. So we need to merge it again. Then we need to mesh boolean it. Then we need to simplify it. And then we need to fix it. All right, so we are now done with our round. This is going to be what we try to print off and pour. So, and you may be saying, well, let's go ahead and print it. Well, for one thing, the bottom's not going to really print very well because only the high points are supported on the print plate. It would print these and go up that 0.5 millimeter and then start trying to print the rest of the background here, and it would turn out like strings because there's nothing supporting it. So it'd be trying to print across from here to here, and there'd be nothing supporting it. It'd just be stringy. It doesn't print that way. In addition, on the top, you can see like this kind of has rounded edges, right? It's rounded over. Well, on the top, your print diameter and layers are as fine a detail as you can get. So I have this set at the highest quality that I can get. This is the smallest diameter print nozzle at 0.2 millimeters, and then 0.06 millimeters is the highest quality that you can get in terms of extrusion. So it doesn't get any better than this. And I've tried doing this, and what you end up with is, I don't know if you've ever seen a topographical map. You get those for mountains, you get those concentric, or they're not round circles, but the concentric lines that indicate elevation. But you essentially get that here in 0.06 increments. So you'll get a 0.06 layer, and then it will move up and print a smaller 0.6 layer because, you know, it's only able to go in those 0.6 stair steps. So how do we get around that? Because that does not look very good at all. And the way we get around it is we're now going to stand it back up. We're going to print it in this orientation. And in this orientation, the print head, it's printing a 0.6 layer, but that layer, it can fine tune how it prints and comes out and around. And I'll show you a little bit about this in a moment. The first thing we need to do, though, is make sure that when it's printing it, there's not going to roll away or vibrate and fall over and create a bird's nest. So the way we do that is we have this tool, which is called supports. So I'm just going to pick a point. It looks like maybe right here where the 3/9 fine text is. We're using this paint tool. Yeah, that's a pretty good size. I have the edge kind of pointed away from me because I don't want to paint out here in this area. So I'm just going to point my cursor to like the edge over here, and we're going to paint down the edge. And by pointing the other edge away from me, I'm pointing out in the air. So now I'll turn it. We'll paint the other edge. So there's that one. And we'll go back on this side. And it looks like 0.9's right about here. We'll paint this edge. Flip it that way. We don't want to accidentally paint on the dog or something out there in the high relief. We missed one little triangle there, so we'll go back and get that. Okay, so there we go. And go back to global. We make sure that support is enabled. I like tree. The manual means where we've painted. So it won't try to put support into any of this other stuff. I use Tree Slim because that's the least intrusive and easiest to get off of it without it creating divots. And we're going to use what's called raft layers. So there'll be a raft around it of 2 layers deep that basically gives it a sticky surface to print the rest of it on. So there we go. That is our round. Let's see, what's the last thing we want to do? Let's save it. And let's just do a quick slice plate. So the slicing is it generating in code every layer that it's going to print. And if we look here, you can now see it's said, okay, for where you painted that you want support, it's going to create these fingers out here on the side, and these are all sitting on this raft to be sticky on the table. And if we scroll in, you can see here's the topographical map. If you look at the top of his head here, that's the layers that we can get. It's much less intrusive in an area like this than if it was covering all of him. So that actually looks good. It's currently going to take 3.56 hours, but we're going to do one other thing. In strength here, we're going to come down here and we are going to set the sparse infill density to 100. And then we'll slice it again. And we're going to take a look at the number of grams it shows here in the model. So we're at 8.46 grams. Now I've done some calculations with some past models, and it turns out that each gram of filament ends up being about 7.85 grams of silver. So just using a quick calculator here on my other screen, 8.46 times 7.8 is going to be about 66 grams. So that's just slightly over our 2-ounce target. So then I have to ask myself, okay, do we want to go just slightly thinner in order to try and hit closer to that 2-ounce? And at this point, that would be something that we could do back here in this one. As a whole, we could reduce this to say 6.2, and that's kind of essentially the same as reducing each individual side that we had there by 0.25, because it also has to account for the 2.5 millimeter Oreo stuffing that we put in the middle there. So let's do that. Let's reduce it down to 6.2. It's not a lot. And let's reslice the plate and see what that did. So we were at 8.46 before. We're at 8.16. So 8.16 times 7.85 gives us 64. So that was about 2 grams. So we would need to reduce it another 2 grams in order to try and hit almost exactly 2 ounces. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll go to 6 millimeters total. And you can see that there's still a lot of detail here. So that should be fine. Let's reslice it once more. Okay, 7.9 grams. So here we go. So 7.9 grams times 7.85. We're at 62 grams target. So that should be almost exactly 2 ounces. Now, I'm not going to guarantee 2 ounces. There's some fluctuation in that, but let's just go with that. The last thing I will show you here is this over here on the side. You can actually pull it down and see each layer as it would be printed. So this is why it's able to print these details much finer, because it can follow the contour around rather than a topographical map. And you can see this is the infill. We're actually not going to print it with that infill. We're going to go back to 25%, and we'll slice it one last time. And you can see that's what the infill. So these are essentially hollow. There's walls inside, but there's air inside, and that's why if you've watched a couple of my videos, I've broken molds, because this is essentially hollow. But there we go. That is our final product for what we're going to try to print. We'll save it and we'll send it to the printer. And what it's going to do is it's going to upload the round here, which takes a little bit. There's actually a computer on the printer that stores the files, so it's transferring this file over to there. And then the printer will start doing its ramp up to do the printing. It has to do a bed warm up. It has to do a bed leveling routine. It does a nozzle cleaning routine, and then it will eventually start printing. I will usually, I'm not going to do it with you guys because that can take quite a little bit. And you see we have 3 hours and 46 minutes of total print time here. So definitely not going to include that here. But I will usually click the camera and watch it. And there you can see my studio. But I'll sit here and watch it while it goes through some of this stuff, and generally watch it while it prints the first few layers. They're the most critical. You have to get a good print on the raft and on the first couple layers after, otherwise you end up with spaghetti or bird's nest on your print plate. So I'll kind of watch it and make sure that it will print correctly. And then once it's printed, we will be headed out to the shop with the print to actually do the pours. So that's going to be it for part 1 here. If you watch through the entire thing, you're still here, definitely leave me a comment down below that you watched the whole thing. I don't know if anybody's that interested in this process that they'll stick throughout the whole thing or not, as long as it was, but I thought having at least one video of my process and how your art becomes silver, for anybody who has trusted me with their pictures of their pets or special pictures that mean something to them. This is the process that it goes through. So you can see it's not just time out in the shop, it's time doing this process, and this takes me a lot less time now than it used to. But anyways, that's it for now. That's it for part 1. Thanks for joining me, and I look forward to your comments on what you thought of this process, and I will catch you this afternoon in the next part.